What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to start with some Trailblazer SS content. Now, I made the video about us picking up that white Trailblazer SS. It's a 2007. We picked it up back in September, and I made a video just kind of showing it off. It's such a clean truck. But this video, we're going to dive right into the projects. It's going to be a pretty project heavy weekend, and we are going to make, I think, at least 2 videos this weekend of some how-tos and some tips and tricks about these Trailblazer SS's. So we're going to jump in today with a brake upgrade. Now, very common on the GMT 800, GMT 900, the K2X trucks, one being my Escalade, which I'll show you, is the 2019 and up 4-piston big brake kit. So it's kind of like an OEM plus big brake kit. And I ended up doing it to my Escalade. It made braking so much better. It converts to a 4-piston Brembo style caliper as opposed to the floating caliper, the 2-piston floating caliper. So let me spin you around here. You can see on the Escalade down in there, that's the caliper there. Painted it red, but it replaced the front calipers on the Escalade, and we're going to be doing the same thing today to the Trailblazer SS. Now, I put new front brakes on this thing a few weeks ago, and I put new pads and new front rotors, but I noticed that when I took it apart, the dust boots around the pistons in the calipers were all like dry rotted and torn. So I was like, you know what, I need to order new calipers. But then that's where my buddy Devin came in to save the day, and he just so happened to hit me up, and he was like, hey, we just took these calipers off of an Escalade and they have maybe 5,000 miles on it. It was like pretty much a brand new Escalade, and the owner was doing a Brembo big brake kit, so they took these off. So they are pretty darn close. I painted the front halves red just like I did on my Escalade, but they are pretty close to brand new OEM takeoffs. They came with the banjo bolts and all that, and all the pads and hardware, which I'll show you guys in a second. So we have these. They came with the proper banjo bolts, came with all the hardware. So let's go check out the hardware, and then I'll explain this project, and then we'll kind of dive into it on the Trailblazer. It shouldn't be too bad of a project. There is some modification necessary to the front knuckle, but we will get into that as we go. Laid out here on my workbench, I have basically both calipers broken down. So let's get into it with this caliper here. So you have 2 bolts. Now, if for some reason you buy these calipers and you don't have the factory bolts, they are an M14 by 2.0 bolt, and lengthwise they are a 40 millimeter bolt. So M14 by 2.0, 40 mil long. And then we have the pins, the caliper pins, the slide pins. We're going to clean these up and re-grease them. We have the clip that puts tension on the pads, and then we have our nearly brand new pads. They're factory OEM GM pads, and they got about 100% life left on them. One side had the electric brake sensor on it. Pop that off. We're not going to need that. Now, what was necessary on my Escalade, and what will be necessary on the Trailblazer here, is washers. So these washers I had laying around, and they fit with the bolts, the M14 bolts, and these washers are ultimately going to go in between the caliper and the knuckle to space the caliper on the brake rotor properly, keep it centered. And these guys, you also need these little clips. They go in the pins once you slide them through to keep everything secure. So I'm gonna take the Trailblazer apart, jack this thing up onto the frame. Now down in here, we have our factory brake, our new few week old rotor. We have our KW coilovers. Now everything looks very shiny and gross, That is because I surface shield or fluid filmed, whatever you're familiar with, everything I could under here just to keep up with the corrosion protection, because we were supposed to bring this truck home in the winter, so I didn't want to get any salt on it and get it rusty, and then we never ended up bringing it home in the winter. So there's that. But while we're here, I'm gonna be doing some spark plugs. So unrelated to the brake video, getting to the spark plugs is easier through the wheel wells on these. And then another video that's gonna be coming out is addressing these KW coilovers and replacing the bump stops that are non-existent on these, and then resetting our ride height to make sure our ride height is equal from side to side. So we'll get to that in another video after this. But first, what I'm gonna do is get a drain pan out. We're gonna take this brake line off, the banjo bolt off the backside here. Then we're gonna pull our caliper off, whole thing in one piece. And then we're gonna pull our rotor off as well. And then we'll have access to the knuckle, and I'll show you what modifications need to be done on the knuckle side in order to fit these 19 and up 4-piston calipers. So to take the banjo bolt off, looks like it's going to be an 11. So we'll break that guy off. And I think, make sure you have a drain pan handy because it will leak brake fluid. This thing definitely needs a brake fluid flush. So another thing that we will be accomplishing while we're doing all this. Make sure you have some M10 crush washers, because you will need to replace the crush washers on this brake hose. So just something to prepare for by the time you decide to do this. And then we have our 19 that we're gonna pop the caliper off. And is this a 19? This is, but they are not 19s. Let's see, let's try 18. 18 it is. Caliper bolts are 18s. Thankfully, they're easy to pop off because I was just here not too long ago. Got one, the other one's right here. Got that caliper bolt. The caliper will slide off. And then we'll pull our rotor off, and we'll just prop that guy on the side here. And then we are left with the knuckle, the spindle. Now, this is a 2-wheel drive truck. So we have the false axle in here, false axle stub. But this is what it looks like behind. We have the dust shields and all that. So where we're gonna be focusing our attention is going to be on this hole right here. Now, we're gonna bring our new caliper over. We're gonna put our top bolt through here, and then I'm gonna show you guys how that bolt doesn't perfectly line up. We're gonna have to ream this out just ever so slightly downward towards the edge to clearance it, make more room for that bolt to come through. So let me grab one of our calipers, get this mocked up. All right, so let's look real closely in there. You can see on the bottom half of the hole that there is a lip. And that is what we're gonna have to ream out with a carbide tip on the Dremel. We'll be making the bottom of that hole a little smaller. That way, everything will line up. And when I mentioned these washers, these guys, they're gonna go in between the knuckle and the caliper to center the caliper properly, which it'll be easier to show you once I have the rotor on. So, time to break out the Dremel with the carbide tips and our carbide bits, and we will get to reaming. Our tool of choice here, I wish I had a bigger reamer bit, but carbide tipped bit here for the Dremel. And we are gonna just go in and out, get after it. It's surprising how quick these carbide tip bits will cut through steel. It's pretty impressive. little bit more. All right, now we are lined up. So pop this back out. Let me show you guys how far I did. It wasn't much. I was going a little bit at a time, but now you can see that hole's been ovalized down towards the bottom corner, just a little bit. So now I'm going to take this all back off. We're going to put the rotor on, and then we're going to make sure this thing is centered up with the washers so that we can install it. Slid the rotor on, put 2 lug nuts on, and then we came in here, got a washer behind the bolt, or in between the knuckle and the caliper, and then we have our bolt. And then I repeated the same thing for back here, tightened down. Check that out. We have a rotor that is pretty much centered in our caliper. So if it's not like, you know, 1000%, it's really not going to matter, but you want that to be as close as you can so that it wears the pads evenly. Now I'm going to get a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to get these copper crush washers off of the factory brake hose, and we're going to affix it to our new caliper with some fresh copper crush washers, and then we will get all of our pad hardware in here and carry on with the rest of the process. Got our factory hose on here. Now I'm going to take some measurements like I mentioned. I'm probably going to make myself a stainless braided line that will have the little junction right here to go into the factory hard line, but we are looking good. Now I'm going to grab the pad hardware and all of that and get us all installed here. The nice thing about Brembo style calipers is that the pads slide in from the top. No more separate caliper bracket and all that stuff. So I marked our outer and our inner. Just going to slide them in. And if you go a little too far, you can push it back up from the bottom. But I'm just going to try and line this top pin up. We are through to the other side. Get the bottom one here. Same deal. This retainer clip applies a downward pressure on everything. So you kind of pinch it and put it in like that. Get the first side over top of the pads like that. And then get this second side in, and then you want to go all the way down with it, clip it into place, and that should be everything. Our pads are lined up with the top of the rotor, so we are pretty much good there. Yeah, that is, everything's looking good. Now, we are still using the factory Trailblazer rotor. Trailblazers have a unique bolt pattern to them. So we are still using the factory Trailblazer rotor here, but we're just throwing that big old 4-piston guy over top of it. So we're good here. Another thing to mention, stock wheel guys, you need, I think it's between a 3/4 or like a 1-inch spacer. I've seen people run both. We have 20x10s all around on this truck, so they're aftermarket wheels, and the 20x10s should clear this. So I think they have enough back spacing where they will clear this caliper. We'll find out when we try and put it on, but I'm pretty sure from what I've seen, 20x10 guys are good. I'm going to pop this bleeder valve open and let it gravity bleed, And then I'm going to jump back in when I go to finish this project up. I'm gonna detour right now and jump to start filming our KW video. So in the meantime, I'm gonna let this guy gravity bleed and start pouring some fresh fluid up in the reservoir and get some clean fluid moving through this thing because the fluid is disgusting. All right, we are jumping back in. It is about a week later, and I did that little black vinyl wrap on the rear bumper. Kind of looks neat, but overall take on this. So after about a week of driving the Trailblazer SS with the 4-piston brakes, as we can see right here, it feels great. It actually feels a lot better. And then just to reiterate, they are 2019 and up, I think Silverado, but then for the Escalades, they didn't start coming on the Escalades until 2021. So like on my 2017 Escalade here, as I showed in the beginning, I have the same exact brakes, and they felt better on this too, especially when towing, because that's primarily what I use this for. But on the Trailblazer, yeah, the stopping power just feels so much better than it did with the factory brakes, even with new pads and rotors. So we have these guys are all pretty much broken in at this point. Everything's good. It feels great. I ran into a little issue. So I mentioned that you have to run either 20x10 wheels or put like a 1 inch to 3/4 inch, give or take, spacer on your factory Trailblazer SS wheels in order to clear the brakes. So if you look in here, like with the 20x10s, I have plenty of room between the caliper and the wheel, whereas the stock brakes don't have that back spacing in here to give you that space that you need. So there's something to note, but I realized that previous owner put these 295 45s on here, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get you in there enough to see. Maybe, let's see. They're rubbing the ball joint ever so slightly. They're rubbing the upper ball joint. So I have a set of 6mm spacers that are going to get delivered today. I'm going to put them on, and that should be fine to use with the stock lug nuts. Stock lug studs, but then that should push me away from the upper ball joint enough that I won't have to worry about it. Passenger side here, but overall, between flushing some fresh fluid, because I had mentioned that the brake fluid was in really rough shape, but flushing some fresh brake fluid through it during the bleed process, and then just having those 4-piston calipers on the front, this thing stops a lot better. So with that being said, and just to reiterate, these are 2019 and up 4-piston brake calipers on stock Trailblazer SS rotors, and then we just reused the factory Trailblazer lines. They just have that washer as a spacer to go in between, and it was all good. So it was a rather simple install for a pretty significant benefit, I would say. I mean, we don't plan on towing or anything with this, but honestly, if it wasn't for the transmission, that 4L70 stuff, you know, I would put a trailer behind it. I mean, you know, it is what it is. But thank you guys for watching. I hope this video was informative for some of you that are looking into doing a similar project. And tune in to the next video. We will be going over the KW coilovers, replacing the bump stops, and basically just refreshing it all, resetting the suspension settings, and then wrapping that all up so that we have a good running, driving, feeling truck in the end. So thanks for watching, guys. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, drop a comment below if you're still here, and we'll see you in the next one.